Hello and welcome to the last lesson in making your Hedgehog Conservation Game in Scratch. Do you remember last week we had a problem with the worms and the beetles in that if you eat them all in the first garden, they don't come back in the second garden. And that's what we're going to fix today, and we're going to use something called cloning. This can be a bit tricky, but if you don't get it, then don't worry. Have a go at making the code and see how it works. That's the easiest way. So I'm going to show you a game that I've made as an example and try and explain a bit how the cloning works. So here we go. This is my game in Scratch. It's called Beetle Cloning. You can see this game in the Hedgehog Republic studio. So cloning is a way in Scratch to make copies of your sprite. So there's only actually one beetle here, and what we're going to do is make copies of the beetle. If I click the green flag, there we go. You can see one beetle and then lots of other ones appear. But they're all actually just copies of that first beetle. But as you can see, they can all move independently of the first beetle. They all go in different directions, which is really useful for our game. So let's have a look at the code for that. Here's the code. And if you look down the bottom here, there's only one beetle. So we're really only using one beetle and using this cloning to create more beetles which all move independently of the first one. It's also really helpful because we don't have to change the code in all the different beetles that we've got. We can just change it in the one place. So it's really useful in creating our game. If you don't get it, that's absolutely fine. Have a look at our website. It's earthgames.uk, and if you go to Learn and Online Resources, you'll find Lesson 6B, which is the one we're on. This is what you'll see. This is the presentation that explains it all. And if you look at this cloning page here, it gives you a video you can watch to explain it, shows you some more pictures, gives you some more writing about how it works. So maybe that might help you as well. Now let's have a look at our game and see how we're going to do that. I've logged into Scratch already. Hopefully you've done that too. You're probably super fast at doing that. Now we need to go to My Stuff and find our game. Here's my Hedgehog Fun. Let's have a look inside. There we go. Here's our game. So this is the full game that we've created. It's got 2 gardens, it's got this badger, so it's got a lot going on already, and we're just going to make it a bit tidier by using the cloning. Down here you can see we've still got quite a few beetles. We've got up to 3 beetles there. You've probably got similar in your game. Now we're going to look at using cloning. So let's make a start. Click on the backdrops down at the bottom right. So I'll just zoom into that for you so you can see it around my face. So click around down there, and then you'll be in the code area for the backdrops. So you should see this timer block and the thing here about switching backdrops. Now we're going to create a new very long block of code. We want the one which says here when backdrop switches to. So click and drag that one. So when backdrop switches to, and make sure the first drop down is New Garden 1 because that's what we're working on at the moment. So now let's look at those beetles, and what we want is a repeat loop, which I don't think we've used yet, but it's fairly obvious. They're in the control category. If you get one at the top here, it's repeat times 10, so it just repeats whatever's inside that loop. I've got 3 beetles, so I'm going to repeat it 3 times. You can change that to the number of how many beetles you've got. And if you look in the control category and scroll down, at the bottom we've got create clone of. Grab that block and put it inside the repeat loop. We don't want to create a clone of the hedgehog, we want to have the beetle. So find beetle, there we go. So that will create 3 clones of the beetle, but we've got some work to do before that will actually work in our game. Now I've got 3 beetles in my game, so what I need to do is keep the original one, which in my game is called beetle, and I'm going to delete beetle 2, so click on beetle 2 and delete, and click on beetle 3 and delete. So make sure you keep your original beetle. So I'm just going to find my original beetle. There we go, so this is my beetle, you can see it's called beetle. We've got to make some changes to the code here. Where we've got when green flag clicked, we want to change it for this block from the control category, which is when I start as a clone. So all the times where you've got when flag clicked in this beetle, we need to swap it over. If you haven't done lesson 5A, you won't have this line of code about having random locations. Make sure you've got that one. You might have to add it. It's very simple. If you can't remember, then go back to lesson 5A and have a look. Great. Now we've got that, then disconnect the blocks and connect them from there and throw away when flag clicked. So we've got to do that for all the blocks that have got when flag clicked in the beetle sprite. So disconnect them, throw away when flag clicked, get when I start as a clone. I'm just going to make my code area a bit bigger so I can see better. So disconnect, throw away, and when I start as a clone. One handy thing is to right click and clean up blocks, and then you can see all your blocks lined up in a nice line, and just check that you've done them all. Yep, that looks good. Okay. Now we're going to look at the worms, and again I've got 3 worms, so I'm going to keep my original worm, which is called worm, and I'm going to delete worm 2 and worm 3. So they're over here, so I'm going to delete that one and worm 3. There we go. So let me find my original worm, and we're going to make the changes in the code there. Again, we need to remove the when flag clicked blocks and change them for when I start as a clone. So disconnect those, throw away that one, and when I start as a clone. There we go. So it's fairly simple, but you've got to be careful and make sure you do everything, otherwise your game won't work. So take your time. Now I'm going to right click, clean up blocks, and then have a look, is there anything else that I've missed? No, that looks good. Keep these ones, both of them have this one, when I receive hide sprite, so you don't need to change that, it's only when flag clicked blocks. Now I'm going to go back to the backdrops area, so click on the backdrops on the garden in the bottom right hand corner, and then you'll see the code in the backdrop. And we've added this one, when backdrop switches to new garden, repeat 3 of beetle. Let's add another loop to add the worms in. So get repeat. I've got 3 worms, so I'm going to do 3. And then we need create clone of at the bottom there. There we go. Create clone of worm. So this will mean that in new garden 1 we've got 3 beetles and 3 worms. Let's click the green flag and see if that works. It looks like it. Yep, I can see 3 beetles and 3 worms. And they're appearing in random positions. If they don't appear in random positions, make sure you've got that random block in there. If you can't remember how to make it, it's back in this code here. Okay? Right, that's the beetles and the worms. Now we also want to amend the other sprites that we've got. So let's start on the shallow pond. I'll just add the loop for that first. So in the backdrops, let's add another repeat loop for the shallow pond. So you can see now that you can start amending things. So if one shallow pond is enough, that's great. If you want to, you can add more. You might also want to look at adding a random block though if you add more ponds. So this time we need the drop down of shallow pond. So we've added the pond there. Now let's look at the pond code. And we've got 1 when flag clicked, so we need to disconnect that, throw when flag clicked away, and get when I start as a clone. So we've changed that one. Let's click the green flag. Yeah, our pond is still appearing there, so that's great. We've done the worm already. Let's look at the netting. Let's add it to the backdrops first. So click on the backdrops, and this is the code for the backdrop area. We'll get another repeat block. There we go. I'm only going to have 1 netting and get the create clone of block, again from the control category, and change the drop down to netting. Now go to the netting sprite And I'm just going to click stop. There we go. Let's see, we've got when flag clicked, so let's change that one to when I start as a clone. There we go. We don't need to change this one, when I receive hide sprites. But we do need to change this one, when backdrop switches to garden 2, then show. We're going to just say when I start as a clone, because we're going to control when that netting shows through the code that we're making in the backdrops. Let's go to the backdrops and see what other ones we need to do. So we've done beetle, worm, shallow pond and netting. Now what about the hog house? So let's add a repeat loop for the hog house. So our code is getting long, but that's okay. Oop, I don't think that went on, did it? Get another one. There we go. Repeat, and I only want one hog house. Oh, that's a good point. How many hog houses do I want? This is new garden 1. I only want no hog houses, actually. I'm going to change it to 0 because I want my hog house to appear in the second garden. So you can say no hog houses. And I guess you could leave it and not add them, but this way it makes it clear what's being added and what's not, and also you can change it really easily. So we want hog house. There we go. Right, let's look at the hog house code. We've got these 2 blocks we need to change. We've got when flag clicked, so that's obvious, so we need to change that one for when I start as a clone. And we've also got this one, when backdrop switches to garden 2, then show. We're going to change that when I start as a clone. But we can leave when I receive hide sprites, that's great. Now let's go back to the backdrops again and add more to this code that's getting ever longer. Probably the longest block you've made. We need this repeat loop again from the control section. So this is for the deep hole, so I'm only going to have 1. Don't want too many chances for the hedgehogs to fall in. And then create clone of, and change the drop down to deep hole. There we go. Now click on the deep hole sprite, and we need to change the code in here. It's only got one when flag clicked block, and get when I start as a clone. If you right click and clean up again, you can just check there's no other code hiding anywhere there. That looks good. Click on the backdrops and we'll add the last one for the badger. So we need a repeat loop. Here we are. I'm definitely only having 1 badger because they eat lots of the worms from the hedgehog, don't they? And then create clone of, and badger. Now click on the badger sprite, and here we've got quite a lot of code, haven't we? I'm going to make my code area a bit bigger. Here's a when flag clicked one, so let's disconnect it, throw that one away, and change it to when I start as a clone. And here's another one, disconnect it, throw that away, when I start as a clone. Perfect. Here we go. So this badger has got a lot more code, hasn't it? So make sure you do all the blocks. Again, I'm going to right click and clean up blocks, especially as we've got so many here. I want to see that I've covered everything. Yeah, that all looks good. Perfect. Now let's check and see if that's worked. Let's have a look at my game. I've got 2 badgers. Something's not right there, is it? Let me check my badger code. I think it's because I haven't got a hide block, so it's not hiding the original. So I think that'll possibly be, yeah. So it'll be covered when I use this hide command. So that's what I need to add at the beginning of my code in here. I want to make sure everything is hidden first. So you saw that made the badger appear and have 2 badgers, which could be interesting, but probably not what we want for the hedgehog. So let's use that message that we created. So that was from the events category. So when the backdrop switches to new garden, we want to broadcast hide sprites. There we go. Now let's click the green flag. That works. Great. So click on the backdrops area, and we're going to now add the code for the second garden. We've got a lot of code here. Let me scroll up. So this is the long bit of code that we've made for New Garden 1. Now the good news is we don't have to make it again. All we have to do is right click on it and duplicate, and then it will make a copy. Perfect. So this is for Garden 2. So change the drop down on here. So when backdrop switches to Garden 2, or whatever you've called it, it might be a different number. Now this is where the fun bit comes, because this is where you can choose to have more beetles or less beetles, less worms, more worms in your second garden. So I've got 3 beetles in my first garden. I think I might have 2 in my second garden, but maybe 5 worms. And I've got a pond still. I've got the netting, so I could just have the netting in one garden. I think I will just have it in the first one. So I'll change that to 0. But I need the hog house, so I need to change that to 1. And at the moment, yeah, I'll keep the deep hole and badger. Let's have a look at that then. Click the green flag and see what happens. Okay, so I can see you've got 3 beetles here. It's hard to tell with the worms. I think the badger might have eaten one already. I can only see 2. Let's go in the second garden. Looks good. I've got, yeah, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 worms. So that's what I wanted, and the hog house. Perfect, that looks really good. So the cloning thing is a bit awkward because you've got to alter lots of little bits of code, but it's quite simple. So you just have to swap that when flag clicked block for the when I started the clone. And as you can see, it can make things quite interesting in terms of what appears in each garden. Makes it easier to control. So I think we've covered everything. Let's have a look at the lesson and see if there's anything else. So we've done the second garden there, haven't we? If any of this is confusing, then please use these instructions and check that everything's okay. Yeah, so we've reached the end there, which is absolutely amazing. So this is the full game that you've created. You can take it further, Theo. It's your game, so you can do whatever you want to it now. You can add more gardens, you can use different backdrops. So you've already got the one that's where they go out and there's a street. You could also have a sort of you lost backdrop as well. Remember, we've got the Hedgehog Republic game where you can get them from. So if I show you that on Scratch. So remember, you can search for Hedgehog Republic. We've got Studios and then Hedgehog Republic. So in our studio, we've got this sprites game, which you have seen already, haven't you? But let me show you that there are lots more gardens in there that you can use. We have got 2 gardens in our game, but you can add more. So I think there are 6 gardens in this game. So you could download some of them and add them to your game and make the hedgehog go all the way through into lots of different gardens. So let's have a look at how many gardens are in here. There we go. So we've got garden 2, garden 3, garden 8. So we've got lots of different ones to choose from. You can add these to your game very easily by downloading them and uploading them again. The other thing I wanted to show you that you could extend your game is look at the complete game, which is down here, Combined Hedgehog Project. And in this game, this has obviously got all the code, but it's also got some other sprites that we might want to use in our game. So for example, it's got some dogs in there. There's also a thing with pesticides. If we have a look down here, there's a dog sprite, so we can have a look at the costumes for that one. So here's the dog, so it's got 3 different costumes. So you could download that and upload it into your game and use that one. You'd have to make it move by itself like the badger does. So that would be a really interesting one to add to your game. So let me finish off then and tell you about what we'll be doing next. Well done, that's amazing. You've finished the Hedgehog Conservation Game in Scratch. I've already given you some ideas about what you can do. You could look at that combined hedgehog project some more and see if it gives you any inspiration. You could also do some research yourself about hedgehogs. What else can you find that you could add to your game? What would be another hazard for the hedgehog? Or something else that would help the hedgehog? Get some people to play your game and get them to give you some feedback. Remember, you can share your game with us. We'd love to see what you've done. It's amazing to see what our students get up to. Finally, I'd like to let you know about a competition we're running at the moment. It's an insect competition, so you need to make a Scratch project about insects. And there's 3 different insects: dung beetles, hoverflies, or mayflies. So you need to make a Scratch project and share it and send it to us by the end of July, 31st of July 2020. Use our website, earthgames.uk, to find out more information. You've got tons of skills now, so I'm sure you'd make a really good game about a different insect. There's sprites you can use on our website as well, which will make it really good. So thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you soon on another project from earthgames.uk.